from the global warming crisis, and we are at a transition of energy transition from fossil fuel to the clean energy. However, the transition cannot start in a jiff of time, and it needs investment as well as collaboration from the public sector, which creates the green business group and taxonomy and carbon credit to accelerate the transition. Fossil fuel will remains to be the main fuel of the world in many decades. And how are we going to live in this world sustainably? When we utilize the energy of the world, have the impact on releasing carbon dioxide to the atmosphere and impact to the environment. Carbon absorption is important. Bangchak Group, as the leader of the energy transition, put importance in creating balance from the transition to clean energy as well as the energy security, and we have invested in the upstream and adjust our main business and into the green business, and as well as initiate new S-curve, and also creating the natural-based solution to absorb the carbon according to the BCP 316 pledge to reach the net zero goal in 2030. Good morning, all distinguished guests and all distinguished guests who join us here in this assembly room of the Bangchak headquarters, or those who are follow us through the Zoom webinar as well as the Facebook Gungtep Business Online, as well as the national YouTube. My name is Witsativekin. Would like to welcome all of you into the energy security and carbon sequestration, which is an annual conference organized by Bangchak. And this is the 12th times and the first established in the 2011. And this time, I'm very glad to be part of this conference, which will talk about the new technology during this energy transition era. Bangchak is not only the leader of the energy transition as well, we are also the lead organizer of the conference regarding environmental seminar. And if you remembered that this is the 12th conference, like annually, today we are going to update on the important topic, which is energy transition from fossil to clean energy, which is not only the goal for Thailand, but every country across the world. For today, all elements of every section of this organization, we also concern of the gas emission. Therefore, so this event is a truly carbon neutral event when we're talking about the transition period from fossil fuel to the clean energy. One thing that we have to admit, as you've seen on the video, that it cannot happen in a blink of an eye, and it takes time. And during this transition, it's important that we still have to depend on the fossil fuel. And everyone realized that using fossil fuel release carbon emission and impact to the atmosphere. The point is, how are we going to utilize fossil fuel as well as move forward sustainably? Therefore, Bangchak have organized this conference in order to try to find the balance between utilizing fossil fuel as well as the natural-based carbon sequestration. And of course, all of this will require enormous amount of investment, the advanced technology, and the collaboration. Today, we have many speakers who will join us to talk about this topic during the transition to the clean energy to achieve the net zero goal, which we put importance in carbon sequestration in the daily base. And we will talk about the CCUS and also the how to a natural-based solution for carbon sequestration, and therefore we will also touch upon the investment of the green business, and therefore we are very honored by the Dr. Charan Dr. Parame Viramati, Chairman of Bank of Thailand, which will talk about sustainable finance taxonomy. However, at this thing, I would like to invite Mr. Chaiwat Kowa Visarat, Group CEO and President of Bangchak Corporation PLC, to talk about energy security and carbon sequestration, as well as the Bangchak perspective from the transition to clean energy for the sustainability of the world. Please give an applause to Mr. Chaiwa Kowa Visaran. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, Kun Ying Tongtip. Hello, Dr. Borameti. And distinguished guests who are here, as well as those who are watching us from online. As the moderator has said, that this is the 12th time that we have been here. In the past 5 to 6 years, we emphasize on startups and energy transition. Today, we might give another perspective. Especially in the last year, we have seen many new occurrence in energies, oil price, 40 baht, and we have not seen that for a long time, 40 baht per liter. And there is another perspective that I would like to give you all. So, do you know that we in a single day, do you know how much energy we use? In a single day, I just learned recently, they use the word extra joule for 1 joule as we study physics. 1 kilogram of mass, we use 1 joule. In a day, around the world, we use 1.7 extra joule per day. So we had 1 million, right? And the 1,000 is billion and trillion. And then the next step is quadrillion. And then million times million and million is quintillion. And extra joule is 10 and with 18 zeros. So per day, we have used 1.7 with 18 zeros behind extra joules per day. So if you put that in a perspective, it means that every day the energy we use equal the Boeing 747 travels around the earth 100,000 rounds every day. That's the energy we use every day. Or Boeing 747 travels to the moon 5,000 rounds per day. So if you time this with a year, that's the entire energy we're using as a population of the Earth right now is massive. As I've said all along, that today we said we would not use a fossil fuel, we would turn off the switch, we would use renewable energy. We have to find that 1.7 extra joule per day to compensate. It's not a process that's going to take in one day. That's why I give another examples. In 120 years, if you look at the global GDP, in 120 years, it raises to 96 trillion. If you look at the population from 1.7 billion to 3.3 billion and then to 7.9 billion. I was born in 1965. So as almost double, the population almost double since the time I was born. Global GDP from 2 trillion. Now it raised it to 96 trillion. The population is double, right? But the GDP is like 4 times more. And behind that, what supports that is energy. The efficacies or the efficiencies of the world we have today, it's energy. Energy enables the global GDP and everything's to be better. But from now on, 10, 20, 30 years, we're going into 100 trillion, so 100 billion. So what? How are we going to use the energy? Where is the energy's sources going to come from? So it's going into 740 extra June. But if we help together, this energy uses could come down to 532 extra June. So there's a plans already set in place, but can we reach there? I think the first key takeaway is that the energy use as humans population is a lot, is massive, and the key driver here is a black hair with coal. So how are we going to replace those energy? One is the examples that are very obvious was a vehicle, and everyone's trying to making this the agenda. And so the history of vehicles, it started in 1866 with the first automobile, and then we had the first revolution of Henry Ford in 1913 with the mass production of Henry Ford. And then for the next 90s, where we were still using this type of vehicle. So if you count like passengers car, we have about 1,450 million cars. So EV has actually been around for a really long time. So in 1897, electric car was introduced in London, and then from 2012, it was mass produced for the first time by Tesla with 120 EV stock that we have, and we think that 2030. 30% of our vehicles would be EV. I don't to make the number even simpler, I expect 10%. I think from 2021 to 2030, we have about 9 years. So in 2021, we have about 17 million EV. So in 2030, I think we're going to up that to 10% of the total vehicles, about 200 million cars. So today we have, let's say I round it up to 20 million cars. We have 9 years to have 200 million cars EV. So that means we have to produce 20 million EVs per year in the 9 years. So, and that is 10%. 20 millions in production of EV. That means we need factory with capacity to manufacture. Since from this year, about 2,000 gigawatt hours per year. And we have like 4 to 5 gigawatts. We need 150 gigawatt factories per year. And in building this battery factory, it takes about a couple years to build. So everyone know that we need to build back battery factory, and we could like accelerate every country build this battery factory. It would take about another 3 years. So we only have like 5 years remaining. So instead of 20 million EV manufacturing per year, we need about 40 million EV units to be manufactured per year. So we can get that to that 10% of population. Um, Bangchak used to tell the story about how we invest in the lithium mining, right? And that was 8,000 dollars per ton, and nowadays it's shoot up to $50,000 per ton. So what I try to say from all of this is that there is no single solution. It could be fuel cell or hydrogen. As I just talked to Ajahn Tongtip, I think in longer term, hydrogen might be the solution. I think I know we're trying to move into one direction, but I don't think there's one single solution compared to the energy usage that we are using right now. So this is the configurations of the energy we use today. 624 extra June, and 2050 we expect that to be lower by net zero with 532 extra June. Similarly to the context of EV, if we have to invest renewable energies, which mean by hydrogen or the dams that we have been investing for 50 years. So the solar and wind farm that takes only that's only 2%, and that's 12 extra June. If we want to increase that to 200 extra June, we have to invest 1 trillion every year in solar and wind energy. So with this same target, if we want to expand our renewable energy, we need a lot of capital investment. And we have not talked about demand supply of raw materials and the commodity price that has been shot up recently. So I think the likely case would be that the reduction would not be massive. The fossil fuel will still exist in longer terms. I know it's a hard fact to hear, but it's a fact that we have to live with it. That if we're living with this scenario, the way to find solution would be different. So, but if we're looking towards the alternative way that without using fossil fuels, if we think renewables can answer to every solutions, I think it's gonna be different. So I think in the end, we still have to rely somewhat on fossil fuel. And that's why it's today's themes of energy security and carbon sequestrations. Fossil fuel will remain with us and will remain with us for a long time. So that's why we have to sequester carbon. This is what we call the energy trilemma of the energy sector. The energy security, energy affordability, the price that everyone can buy, and environmental sustainabilities. So two of these three pillars always goes along, but these three pillars going together is very hard. So for example, if we want energy security, we invest in fossil fuel, but eventually we get security, but we can't afford the price. Or it pollutes the earth through the carbon. Or if we emphasize on environmental sustainability, We said renewable is the solution. Renewable is the only answers to the crisis. And if we invest all on that, okay, the cost of renewable would be affordable. The price could be compatible. But what we lack is energy security. What do we do on the day without the sun? So if the battery storage runs out, what we're going to do? So two out of these three pillars are easy to get along, but three pillars getting along together is very difficult. It's like juggling the balls. That's why we have to revisit here today and try to rethink the ecosystem of the current world that we have, the oil and gas industries, the trees in the world. We hope that it would absorb carbon dioxide. That could happen about like 30 years ago when the GDP was less, we have less population, but nowadays we have to think of the other way. What I'd like to share today, the new mission of Bangchak is crafting sustainable world. The emphasis is on the craft. As I said, we use up a lot of energies, and renewables cannot be the only answer. What we're trying to do that we have to build the new ecosystem, whether like carbon capture or renewable or synthetic fuel, which is low carbon, and then hydrogen. This is what we have to help and what we have to pushing forward. The money we get invested nowadays, we talk about petroleums or subsidies. This money has to be channeled to support to build the new ecosystem that could help us to live with fossil fuels while we able to remain our energy security. So we are honored by Dr. Parameti, who is the board of Bangchak and also the president of BOT. He's going to talk about taxonomy. How can we channel the money or the fund to the green economy? And then he's going to discuss market mechanisms about green economy. So those are the two main factors to drive the ecosystems that could help us sustaining the world. Carbon sequestration. We are honored by both those who are present here and those who are online. Some of them sent the videos. So whether like natural-based solutions, science-based solutions, we're going to discuss in these seminars. The wetland, we're going to talk about this as well, wetland-related practice. We do restorative agriculture with farmers, dry farm and wet farm, which reduce carbon emission. These are the process that we're trying to do. Ocean-based practice, we're trying to build ecosystems in the sea. We went to see Russia, if you remember. We're trying to absorb carbon in the ocean. So in the pillar that we put by the shore, so these are the pillars that absorb the carbon. So those are the ecosystem that help the natural carbon dioxide absorption. And then we have carbon capture and storage. We are honored by Kun Rob.
เขาจะมาแชร์กับเรานะครับว่า
Kun Rob is going to share with us how did he do in Australia. We have the direct air capture. It's the air that we feel. How do we capture carbon dioxide from that and sequester that into the land? Enhanced weathering. We put silica on the soil and we're trying to absorb carbon dioxide there. And then ocean alkalinization, so that could bury deep down in the deep ocean. So these are the technologies. And then Kun Paramati is going to mention this, the taxonomy. So which is the process for the financial institutions and not just banks. It includes like, corporate bonds companies, investments companies to manage the green economy. So a lot of countries are pushing forward taxonomy. I understand that Thailand, we're going to announce this very soon, either this year or next year. So this is a sneak peek from the president of BOT. What is Thailand taxonomy is going to look like? One more time. So Bangchak has our own pathway, and our main pathway is that. So what we release on the distills factory, it's about 1 million tons per year. So we're trying to reduce by 30%, and that means 30% improvement for efficiency and process. If you've seen from the electricity plant and the boiler, we're trying to recycle the coating in the reactors to reduce the use of energy. So all of this we're trying to reduce. So we expect to reduce 30% of improvement. And then 10% we're going to offset with Department of Fishery, Department of Forestry. Another 60%. We're trying to build this ecosystem, and we're trying to invest into low carbon industry. And Bangchak is going to be the first. It's that investing in sustainable fossil fuel. And then we expect that jet fuel, 5 to 10% is going to come from Bangchak. So this is what we're currently investing right now. And that's the ecosystem that we're trying to make. And then another one that's very important. Last year, July, we formed a small group with other about 10 companies, and now it's snowballed into 30 to 40 companies with Tiver and I will. So for private companies to be able to participate, we can be able to create carbon markets club. So we can use this fossil fuel to build externality. It's like people driving a trailer that pay higher toll fee because they damage the road more than a sedan. So as far as to like work in this energy industry, so it's similar as that it's like the trucks that run on highway, they have to pay for the cost or pay for the damage that they do for increasing the heat in the world or making the world warmer. So that's the carbon credit or the carbon tax that the Carbon Markets Club is pushing forward. So that's an idea from Bangchak. What the truth is right now is that it's not turning off the switch. This transition, renewable is not the only solution. We will be using fossil fuel for a long time. So as Toyota has said, it said if carbon is an issue, then why do we have to kill fossils? So it's like like to put it in perspective. For example, if you get COVID, why would you have to kill a person? You kill the virus, you kill the COVID, right? So if the carbon is an issue, why do we not manage the carbon? Why do we have to kill the fossil fuels? So I think that's the ecosystem that we are looking for, a more sustainable world that we are going forward to. So I spent a little bit more than my time that given to me, but I think this is a perspective that I think could be different from what we hear throughout the year, but I think is the truth and a hard fact that we have to endure. So thank you very much. Thank you, Kun Saivat Kova Visarat, the president of Bangchak and the CEO of Bangchak Corporation. So it's 20 minutes that everyone's is looking forward. They're seeing the greener future. So it's eye-opening, and it allows us to see that the next steps in transition, how we go into transition in this world so that the world can move forward sustainably. As Kun Chaiwat has said, we need the time because it's not a blink and an eye, right? To make this transition, we need energy, we need solution. But another thing that we need is finance. Finance is another motor that be able to drive this world through the transitional period. So from changing from fossil fuel to clean energies to drive it forward, sustainable finance is another element, important element that the world are focusing on. Our country, Thailand, as well, is pushing forward the green economy. So next, we're going to sustainable finance taxonomy. So please give a big round of applause to President of BOT, Dr. Porameti Wimonsiri, please.
Good morning, all distinguished guests. Today, I think it's a good sign that all of us are here to talk about those who are come here on site as well. And however, even though we are at the post-COVID period, and hopefully next year we may have to confront with the economic regression globally, or even the inflation or the risk regarding the war that is happening, and there are many more challenges that might happen in the future and await us. And of course, another thing that awaits us is the sustainable development as well as the climate change. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Chaiwat for giving me the topic of sustainable finance taxonomy to discuss with you today, because I think many people see the agenda and might think that we are going to talk about tax, but I have to tell you that no, we are not talking about tax. In the context about sustainable development, it is something that Thailand realized, and it's the necessary of doing this, and we have set up our own goal as well as trying to comply to the UN SDG, which we have agreed upon at the Paris Convention. But we all know that in order to achieve this goal, we need a collaboration as well as cooperation from all stakeholders. And recently at the COP27, a conference on the 6th to 18 November in Egypt country, Thailand, will adjust our goal to be more challenging, and we will try to expedite our goal in minimizing the GHG emission to reach the zero carbon goal in to accelerate it by 15 years. And on the financial side, which is the middleman who's providing financing to all parties or sectors who have important role in driving the execution to achieve this goal, we also put importance on the sustainable development by trying to support the on the pillars of the ESG pillar, which is environment, social, and governance. Now, and however, there are the need of around 5 to 7 trillion US dollars annually in order to achieve the 17 SDG goal, and around 4 trillion US dollar annually to the until 2030 to control the global temperature to not increase more than 1.5 degree Celsius. We require all this investment to try to achieve our goal, and there are many ways to divert the investment that we have put across the world into this area, and to fundraise. Okay, and that's the reason why we have to try to raise fund in order to invest in this area. On the other hand, as the society as well as the financial sector are interested in any financing products to support the sustainability. There are products that announce that they are supporting ESG or the green business. And however, how can we ensure that such financial product or the investment really do invest to support or promote the environment and not the greenwashing? And of course, we need transparency as well as the reliability, credibility to ensure that both the donor or the investor and the consumers are ensured. And that's why that's why taxonomy is important element. And now I am going to talk like broadly about the what's the definition, the expectation of and the goal of the sustainable finance taxonomy of Thailand. So, as a regulator of the Thailand finance company, we have set up the working group of the sustainable finance taxonomy, and we have the key working group comprised of the Bank of Thailand, SEC, and the OIC as well as SET and FPO. So we work all the five key stakeholders have come together to set up the key strategic initiatives. And so in this working group, okay, on sustainable finance, okay, we have released the key strategy initiatives, okay, regarding this. And so on the very first initiatives is to develop a practical taxonomy. What is taxonomy then? Taxonomy is that we are going to give a definition on and categorization on the activity related to the business and sustainable business operation and environment, and to make everyone on the same page as well as practice the same standard. And this will also ease both the regulator and the business operator to be aligned on what its taxonomy, and which will lead to the access to more financing and funding. And also we on the another initiative, we also talking about data disclosure on the ESG, which is consistent with the standard and allowed monitoring, okay, and we implementing effective incentives, okay, and to give motivation for the private sector to enter into this market, as well as to create demand for the financing tools to address the sustainable issue, as well as the last strategy would be to build the human capital or capacity sustainably. So those are the 5 key strategic initiatives to create the financing taxonomy. However, on the very first initiative, which is in line with the other countries, such as the EU, which is well advanced in this area, and so they also utilize and they also started from the same first strategy, which is to develop a practical taxonomy when they start doing it. Now, now I'd like to tell all the distinguished guests that this issue is in line with the Bank of Thailand's mission in embedding taxonomy development. Okay, and we'll work on the digital part, the green, sustainable part, and the third one is to create a resilience to risk for the Thai economic. We also aiming to work on the environment, and we have set up the directional paper for the environmental sustainable development. Okay, just this August, and taxonomy is one of the tool that is embedded in that guideline as well. BOT have also recognize about the adaptation to transition, similar to what Kun Chaiwat have mentioned, that the change or transition to sustainable needs to take into account the context of the country, as well as the country's economic readiness. And in Thailand, we still have the high dependency to fossil fuel, and existing technology in the country is still quite a traditional one, and not the most friendly to environment per se, and still need a lot of things to adapt and adjust ourselves. Okay, and therefore it's important that we need to take into account the impact of what the change or transition will cause to us, as well as we need to be aware and recognize the urgent issue that we need to address, such as the climate change, and also. So if we're walking too fast, it might cause the huge impact to the economic. And so the key question is, how can we move on move forward in timely manner, as well as to minimize the impact that will cause to our economic. BOT have set up a working group on taxonomy in just this August this year, And so we are still at the very beginning phase. And so besides the 5 key financial regulators, we need to work with the second group, which is the government agencies and business councils, comprised of the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Energy, the Federation of Thai Industries, and the Board of Trade of Thailand. So these are some of the example. And on the third group, it comes from financial sector stakeholders. Today we have the Thai Bank Association, the Association of International Bank, or GFA, and commercial banks and underwriter and issuers. So these 3 parties come together as the working group on how to define what Thailand taxonomy will be and how to drive it in the next phase, as well as to continue improving it. However, it's fortunate that there are many lessons from the other countries, as well as we are fortunate to have the consultant who have the veteran who are the veteran in taxonomies. We have the consultant experts from the EU and the Singapore to help us building the taxonomy in Thailand. The goal to have the standard taxonomy in Thailand, which address to the goal, the international goal, and the government sector, the private sector will be able to use this taxonomy policy as the foundation when they develop or consider make decision about anything. Now, talking about Thailand taxonomy. We expect that it will be similar to the other countries. And now the ASEAN countries also have set up the ASEAN taxonomy. And now talking about Thailand's approach in taxonomy, it will be similar to the other countries in setting up the principle regarding the activities that will be included under taxonomy, that what would be the criteria of the business and what's the technical screening criteria of which technology and how are you going to do it to contribute to the national environmental goal. The Thailand's direction at this step, this preliminary step, is we aim to announce this taxonomy around the beginning or the middle of next year and then put into effective. During the first phase, we will start with the energy sector and the transportation sector first, because these are the 2 sectors that contribute to around 69% of the GHG and emission of Thailand. Now, on the environmentally wise, on the goals are quite vary. We will start with the mitigation and to try to mitigate and address the climate change and the GHG issue. Now, so as I said earlier, this is the comparison on the key features of Thailand taxonomy against the other countries. And also the readiness of, for example, the EU, which is the most advanced countries, or that they already work on climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and covering the water and marine protection, and also the waste and recycling, biodiversity, for example. And for the other countries, also in the same direction for Thailand. Our goal is to also to implement in many approach, but it will be in line with what the other countries are doing. But however, the first priority here for Thailand would be climate mitigation. The approach that we use might be a little bit different. So like EU as the most advanced countries, or the group of countries, so they are likely the one who set up the technical screening criteria base, and they are very detailed on the technical screening and covered all industries and products. And for other countries, the criteria might not be as the detailed as the EU, and maybe more on the higher level than the EU, and not as comprehensive. Usually covered the direction and the activities that will include and ensure that all activities would contribute to address the environmental issue. Now, about the sectors is also depending on the readiness of each country. The application, there are two countries which is quite very committed, which is the EU and China Republic, that the taxonomy are mandatory. Meanwhile, the other countries are still working on the voluntary basis, as the same as in Thailand. Okay. Now, for the related sectors, like the EU financing is also including in the taxonomy of the EU. Like, it's mandatory that for data disclosure of the employee turnover, the cost of investment, cost of operating, like what the percentage of those activities that are contributed to the environmental activities. For Thailand, we will start with the government agency first, and then roll out to other sectors or industries later in other phase. Now, for the ASEAN countries that have already worked on taxonomy, which is Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Singapore, is also during the consultation paper. The other two is Philippines and Thailand that are working on taxonomy. Now, talking about the detail of the Thailand taxonomy, it will be quite detailed. We covered the activities, the criteria, and the concepts. And this is just a glimpse of what Thailand taxonomy will be. And as I mentioned earlier, that we will start with the energy and transportation sector first, which is the two largest sector contribute to GHG, and so we'll use the traffic lights metrics, okay, to measure the performance, like the threshold. So the green one will, of course, be the best practice, which release emission intensity of less than 100 grams CO2e, which this is the international best practice. However, if for those company or operators that technology doesn't reach that level yet, okay, maybe they need to have to install additional technology as well as retrofit of existing technology, so that all these business would be categorized into the amber group, and the red one would be the new natural gas-based power plant are excluded. And as I told you that this is just the high level summary of Thailand taxonomy, and there are more detail in every area. We will touch upon the energy storage and or the transportation will cover land, marine, and also aerial transportation. We also talking about battery manufacturing, and so this is what the Thailand Working Group on Sustainable taxonomy finance have to work on, and that's the reason why we have to engage the Ministry of Finance as well as the Ministry of Environment into this working group. Now, what's the next step of this is we need to share data among all the key stakeholders, and that's why again we need to engage the business operators as well as the different associations related to the environmental taxonomies for set up the baseline as well as to standardize. And we also have to work on the building the capacity of the staff, okay, or the local verifier. And because if we have to hire a verifier from overseas, it will be expensive and will be difficult to access by the SME level company. Now, the taxonomy needs to be reviewed regularly, like every a few years. And in Thailand, we also recognize this. So, in the next few years, once the technology changes in the future, and once more people or more business adopt taxonomy, then we have to review all the criteria and the principle again. So this is the high level of the Thailand taxonomy and what it will be, and you can look for more example or detail from the other countries online. And so, as I say, that we aim to launch a Thailand taxonomy either early or the middle of next year. And so this is what we are working on so far and will happen soon. And I believe that taxonomy will be an important tool for us and for Thailand to achieve the net zero goal under the taxonomy definition, to allow the business sector to adapt their business to minimize the GHG emission. And also to avoid greenwashing. Meanwhile, the financial industry, financial institutions will be able to use this taxonomy principle and definition as the base or foundation to develop their products to address to the need of their clients. And it will also allow accessibility to financing for those business operator who are working on the environmental area. Now, distinguished guests, sustainable development is a collective responsibility that we need to work together, and sustainable finance taxonomy is another step for us to walk forward. Thank you very much, the Chairman of Bank of Thailand, Dr. Paramethi Vimonsirit, for your keynote speech today. And now may I ask you to remain on the stage for the group photo for today. And as Dr. Paramethi have said, indeed, sustainable finance taxonomy. Now we understand better about what a green taxonomy is. Next, I would like to invite.
And first, I would like to invite upon the stage the Director and Chief Executive Officer of Star Petroleum Refining Company Limited, Mr. Robert Dobrik, to be on stage. Please give him a big warm welcome. ขอเสียงปรบมือต้อนรับท่านด้วยนะครับ He'll be one of our speakers who join us here physically here at the headquarters of Bangchak Corporation. ลำดับต่อมานะครับขอเรียนเชิญท่านประธาน
Next, I would like to invite the Mr. Chaiwat Kova Visarat on the stage, please. And next, we have another speaker who will take a group photo with us on the stage. But now let's start with the three
four speakers as well. The first is Mr. Roberto Bocca, who is the head of Platform and Shaping the Future of Energy, Materials, Infrastructure, World Economic Forum from Switzerland. Mr. Moji Karimi, co-founder and CEO of Semfita Factory Incorporated, United States of America. Mr. Aniruddha Sharma, co-founder and the CEO of Carbon Clean Solutions Limited, United Kingdom. And last but not least, Ms. Flora Ziqing, the Global Vice President of Nature-Based Solutions from Shell. And this will be our first photo shooting opportunity. Just ถ่ายภาพแรกกันก่อนนะครับ อย่างที่ได้เรียนนะครับว่าช่วง transition period นะครับ
As I said, during this transition period, and there are many things that needs to be done now. Next, I would like to invite. Let's take a photo first. Next, I would like to invite the Kun Thongthip Ratanarat, consultant and the Board of Director of Petroleum Institution of Thailand. Next, ML Ditpanada Diskun, CEO of Mae Pha Luang Foundation. Next, I would like to invite the Deputy MD, Mr. Pasersak Chawano from Bangchak. Next, I would like to invite Chief Executive Officer on Marketing, Mr. Somchai Techawanit of Bangchak. Next, for the Vice President of Bangchak on the business development, Kun Chokchai Aswarangsan. And next, the CEO and MD of BBGI, Mr. Kittipong Lim Suwanrod. And one more, I would like to invite the คุณบัณฑิตหันษากุล on the stage
ภาพในช่วงนี้นะครับก็เป็นเสมือนนะครับการรวมตัวกันนะครับเป็นการ
So the picture now is our like the launch of the 12 consecutive seminars that so today is under the topic of energy security and carbon sequestration. It's 12th time for Bangchak to organize such seminars. We discuss important issues on energy transitional period, from going to fossil fuel into clean energy. Does not happen within a blink of an eye. It needs solution, it needs technology, it needs taxonomy to drive the transition sustainably. So we'll we would take the photo for a moment. So during this transition, we'll still need to use fossil fuel, but it needs to be more sustainable, and it needs to ensure the continuity of the economies. And this is emphasized by everyone in the world, not just Thailand. And we are honored today by speakers all around the world. So please give a big round of applause for everyone on the stage, please. Thank you, everyone. So this is the official beginning of the 12th annual seminars from Bangchak Group. Next, I would like to invite the speakers who will discuss new technologies that we use during transition. So from fossil fuel into renewable energies, including hydrogen and CCUS. So our first speakers. So the first topic is global energy outlook and energy transition. Southeast Asia, it's an important mechanisms of global economy. As Kun Chaiwat has mentioned, the only way to grow is to have energy support in the back. So there's a lot of energy demand in our region. So how do we manage this energy transitions in our region? So this is the pre-recorded multimedia video from
multimedia upon the topic global energy outlook and energy transition. And the speaker for this session is the head of platform for shaping the future of energy, materials and infrastructure, World Economic Forum, or WEF from Switzerland. And now he's ready, I think, Mr. Roberto Bocca.
I would like to thank Bangchak Corporation and Kun Chaiwat for inviting me today. Bangchak is a value partner of the World Economic Forum, and we would like to thank you for your continued support and engagement in the region and beyond. Your long-standing partnership has contributed greatly to the Forum's effort in the energy domain, and I appreciate this opportunity to share the Forum as well as my own perspective with you. For today's seminar, I'd like to speak about three main issues. First, what I call the framework on how to look at the energy system and its transition. Second, the energy triangle. And finally, putting this in context of what is going on in the world. Starting with the framework for understanding the energy system and its transition, there are 6 key points I like to highlight. Energy has always been and will continue to be the key enabler of economic development. Point 2, energy is affected by and affecting both geopolitical issues and environmental issues. Here we are talking not only about climate, but also biodiversity, water, and food. Point 3, energy needs to transform in a more balanced way across the so-called energy triangle, taking into account sustainability, justice, and security at the same time. I will come back to this point. When we talk about energy system, most people mainly focus on supply, when it is in fact about supply, transmission, and demand. Therefore, as my fifth point, when it comes to the energy transition, we must look through the lenses of where the most demand is and will be. The forum has identified this area of demand to be cities and the built environment, industrial ecosystem and mobility, and across all of those, emerging markets. Let me tell you that you are at the heart of the energy transition. What happens in Asia today, but more importantly in the coming years, will influence the shape of the transition globally. This particularly applies to Southeast Asia, with the region being a major engine of global economic growth, and therefore playing a significant role when it comes to energy demand. When thinking what enables the transition, there are of course multiple factors, but for today's seminar, I'll mention 6 again that are perhaps the most critical. These are technology, policy, finance, material, business model evolution, and new model of collaboration. I think everyone knows well already the first 3, technology, policy, and finance. For the other 3, the materials availability of the energy system of the future seems to be less known, but will become more and more critical. Obviously, business will have to evolve and adapt to keep profitability in the new context. But the final enabler I want to bring to your attention is the idea of new model of collaboration across companies, across industry, across all stakeholders, and also across countries. Because given the current economic system are already very well optimized, only new models of collaboration can really drive the significant change needed. We need to avoid acting in silos, but rather holistically and collaboratively. Moving on to the second topic that I like to address, allow me to share what I mean when I talk about energy triangle. Putting it simply, the current energy system has to evolve across the 3 dimensions of what an energy system must deliver. It needs to support economic growth, it needs to ensure energy security, and it must be sustainable. These 3 dimensions are equally important. And while people, especially in the West, often talk about transition as a synonym of sustainability, I want to be very clear that this is not enough. And it is part of the reason why transition, in my view, does not accelerate fast enough. It is too simplistic. Energy systems are very complex, as you very well know. And the transition is likewise very complex. And both are really anchored in the 3 dimensions I just highlighted. For the same reason, as a way of addressing this complexity, the Forum has for the past 11 years released an annual energy transition index to measure exactly that, the transition of countries across the multiple dimensions and the enabler of this transition. This brings me to the third and final issue I like to address. Looking at the world as it is right now and recognizing these complexities. Ultimately, what we witness today is a rebalancing of the world power, and as a consequence, a rebalancing of what powers the world, the energy. The way I see it, this rebalancing will most likely not happen in an orderly manner, as many wish, due to both the speed needed and the complexity we highlighted. What we are currently facing is an unprecedented energy crisis. We see on one hand how the pandemic, the steep economic rebound, and the war in Ukraine have brought severe consequences for people, companies, and economies around the world. The market turbulence caused by this event has really put a spotlight on energy security vulnerabilities. It also highlights the interconnectedness of the energy system with other systems, such as food. This is also the case for Southeast Asia. The region has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, by new energy policy commitments, and more recently, by the volatile prices. All of this has brought energy security challenges to the surface. At the same time, we see the window for reaching the SDG goal closing in. In the World Economic Forum Energy Transition Index report, we found that the major transformation across the global energy system needs to happen already by 2030. It is therefore now more than ever important to supercharge the energy transition to ensure economic growth, to deliver on energy security, and to achieve the sustainability goals. And for this, the region is well positioned to act and create lasting impact for the region itself and the world at large. No one actor, be it a company or a government, can do this alone. Therefore, partnership and innovative forms of collaboration will be critical to addressing these challenges. Concluding, I want once again extend my gratitude to Bangchak and Kunchaiwat for inviting me to this seminar. I wish you a fruitful and productive rest of the event. Thank you very much on behalf of myself and the World Economic Forum.
ขอเสียงปรบมือด้วยนะครับ
Please give a big round of applause. So he emphasized on many points. So he said that the energy transition will have to look at where the location that it needs intense energy, especially the growth engine in Asia, our region. So as we use a lot of energy, we have to think hard on the transitional period. He explains 6 factors. And then the last thing that he emphasizes on is collaboration from all sectors. In the past, of course, that collaboration, but he said that is not enough. So, and especially this region is important, right, to the conflict of many parts. So, in these regions, we could move forward with this collaboration from fossil fuels to clean energy effectively. So next, we will discuss on what we talk about a lot in the energy sector, which is hydrogen. And hydrogen is, of course, an important factor to reduce the carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases. We have heard like gray, blue, green hydrogen, and it's a clean energy without releasing carbon dioxide. But now there is another hydrogen that's quite amazing. I've heard for the first time, which is Go Hydrogen. So today we will get to know what is this Go Hydrogen. Our next speakers will talk about this Go Hydrogen key to net zero economy. He will join us through Zoom from the United States. I understand he cannot go to bed yet because he has to talk to us.
Digitally via the Zoom webinar, and I think that the next speaker is ready to talk to us. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Semvita Factory Inc., which is a startup from United States of America, who will be talking to us upon the topic Gold Hydrogen. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Karimi. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Now the floor is yours upon the topic Gold Hydrogen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I wish I could be there in person, but very grateful for the opportunity and sharing with you our vision for Gold Hydrogen. All right, if you pull up the slides, I could get us started here. Perfect. Thank you so much. And let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Great. I wanted to take a minute just to introduce our company, Semvita Factory, and then get into Gold Hydrogen. And that will help with the context of how we arrived at the idea for Gold Hydrogen. As a company, Semvita, we deploy nature-inspired economical solutions to empower the energy transition and create a brighter future. The nature-inspired part of what we do is based on the use of industrial biotechnology or microbes, and in some cases, engineered microbes for deploying the solutions that I'll share with you here shortly. The way that we do this is through deployment of plug-and-play processes that really target reutilization of existing infrastructure. We strongly believe in opportunities that use existing infrastructure across oil and gas, chemical and petrochemical sectors, as opposed to necessarily having to create new infrastructure. And so we found that to be a very effective way to reduce the capex and the cost of deploying these solutions by being more creative in the way to reuse the infrastructure. And Gold Hydrogen is a great example of that, as you will see here shortly. As far as industries of the future, the sustainable industries of the future, we believe that they will be built upon three pillars. The first one is going to be sustainable extraction of natural resources. So all companies that kind of have this relationship with natural resources, whether that's hydrocarbons in the subsurface or the minerals, in the mining industry, they're striving to reduce their carbon footprint, but also their overall environmental footprint. And biotechnology has a lot of elegant solutions for this. The second pillar is sustainable production of chemicals and fuels through biomanufacturing. And so biomanufacturing, I think, is going to continue to play a big role here, as a lot of the methods that have been evolved, for specialty chemicals become more and more affordable to deploy also for other chemical intermediates, especially those that are precursors to polymers and plastics, as well as fuels. And this is important because this addresses scope 1 emissions, which are really hard to get rid of. And in biochemical processes, most of these reactions happen under ambient pressure and temperature or close to that. And so that's a huge advantage compared to a typical chemical reaction where we have to deploy 1,000 degrees centigrade and 10,000 psi is not uncommon. And then finally is a renewable, the sustainable renewal of any kind of waste that's created in the extraction and production process back into other sources of value and useful material. We think that waste will continue to play a big role in kind of filling the demand for feedstock, because right now there's a bit of a feedstock problem. On one hand, there's people don't want as much fossil fuels as feedstock, and then if we were to use sugar and corn or biomass as feedstock, right now they're viewed as the better option compared to fossil fuels, but they have other environmental problems, water use, fertilizer use, transportation emissions that add up. So that leaves us with waste, and CO2 as an example is a waste stream that could be used as a feedstock for conversion into other material. And so these three pillars is kind of the guiding lights in how we think about developing the solutions, and gold hydrogen also as an example. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so for the past 5 years, we have been deploying this kind of methodology to develop unique solutions across energy transition. And these solutions kind of fit into three different buckets that you see here. The first one is CO2-based biomanufacturing. We use microbes that could use CO2 as a feedstock along with another waste stream that is not hydrogen, and convert the CO2 into other chemicals. One of those is ethylene. We know a project that we have with Oxy in the US. Another pathway that we have is from CO2 to sustainable aviation fuel that we are commercializing along with our partner United Airlines. And then we have also another pathway for conversion of CO2 to renewable natural gas. And that's a two-step process from CO2 to kind of an intermediate that is comparable to organic matter, which then we feed into anaerobic digesters to produce RNG basically. The second bucket is biomining. This is using microbes to extract metals from the rock. We have a special focus on lithium and also on copper. For lithium, we produce an alternative to sulfuric acid, which is a different kind of lixiviant, or in this case, it will be biolixiviant because it's made by microbes. And this biolixiviant is very selective to lithium. So it would extract the lithium and leave behind a lot of the impurities, calcium, magnesium, and it would make the overall process both low carbon and also with a much lower environmental footprint, because we don't have to use sulfuric acid, which is about 40% of the capex for the current method for extraction of lithium from lithium clay. We just announced a partnership with Lithium Arizona in the US, and have others in the pipeline for this as well. And then for copper, this focuses on bioleaching of copper from heap leaches, especially low-grade ore like chalcopyrite. And as you guys know, we're going to need a lot of copper and a lot of lithium to actually enable energy transition, electrification, and also energy storage. All right, so that was mostly just for context about the company, but let's talk about gold hydrogen, which is the third bucket, and this overall concept of subsurface biomanufacturing. When we thought about what is happening in the subsurface, it's basically a natural bioreactor, and throughout history, we have really focused on how to find where the oil and gas is, which is exploration, and then how to get to it, which is drilling. I started off as a drilling engineer, petroleum engineer, and then how to get it to surface, which is production, and then kind of hand it over to midstream and downstream for refining and petrochemical use cases. We never thought that it is possible to actually change the product from subsurface to surface. And now, with this knowledge that we have about subsurface microbes, for the first time, that is possible to actually do that. And so the overall concept for gold hydrogen is to use unrecovered hydrocarbons in depleted oil and gas reservoirs and kind of end-of-life assets, and use the microbes in the subsurface to ferment the oil and produce hydrogen. So gold hydrogen is defined as hydrogen that's produced biologically and in the subsurface. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, and just to add a bit more context, I think in this room, everyone is familiar with the different shades of hydrogen. But just to kind of level set, I wanted to just spend a few seconds just to share that. Of course, green hydrogen is hydrogen that's produced using renewable electricity with electrolysis, and then there's different variations of that. If the source of energy instead of solar and wind is nuclear, then you have the pink and purple and red. There's other variations like turquoise hydrogen if you use hydrolysis of methane. Black and gray are more traditional, using fossil fuel as a feedstock. And then blue is the variation where you would do steam methane reforming, which is currently the status quo method, but capturing the CO2 off the back end, and therefore decarbonizing the hydrogen that's produced that way. So just wanted to share that for a bit more context in case someone in the room may not be familiar with the different colors. I think, honestly, eventually all the colors are just going to go away, and it is going to just become about what is the carbon intensity and what is the cost of the hydrogen. But when we launched gold hydrogen, we decided to pick a color because everyone who is passionate about hydrogen, they're also really obsessed about knowing all the colors. So it was a good way to introduce a new solution to the market. Next slide, please. So gold hydrogen produced biologically in the subsurface. The way that this works is we find assets, and these are, by the way, all conventionals. This doesn't apply to unconventionals because we are going to need porosity and permeability in the subsurface. And we have a screening tool to kind of determine what reservoirs are a better fit for gold hydrogen based on the reservoir temperature, salinity, porosity, permeability, and a few more parameters. What we do, then we go to those assets and formulate a selection of nutrients, which includes different nutrients, but also microbes that we could inject, as well as inhibitors to kind of stop reactions that we don't want, and stop microbes that we don't want from eating the food from the microbes that we want, such as sulfate-reducing bacteria that could produce H2S, and I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with those. So then we start to develop this plan where we inject this package in the subsurface to activate the hydrogen production reaction, and then it will produce hydrogen off the back end. So in a commercial setting, this would look like a water flood operation where you have injectors and then you have a few or more producers. Our expectation is to produce about 1 ton of hydrogen per well per day. And what we're considering commercial right now is when we could get to about 50 ton of hydrogen per day. So that would mean that in a given kind of a water flood operation, we're going to need, 10 to 20, 25 different wells, producer wells in a given field for commercial operation. Now, the big advantage with gold hydrogen is really the cost, because the capex is very minimal. These are assets that are, in some cases, even liabilities for companies, because they have to spend money for plug and abandoning these assets. So that would allow us to either partner with operating companies or acquire these assets at a low cost and give them a new life with the gold hydrogen, turning them into subsurface hydrogen production facilities. As far as what happens to the hydrogen once it's produced, depending on the logistics in that specific area, we have a few options. Anything from transportation with trucks, or pipelining, or natural gas blending, or conversion to ammonia, or electricity in kind of a smaller units that could be available depending on the geographic area. So the other thing to mention is this process does also produce CO2, and we could either co-produce the CO2 and separate it on surface and re-inject it back in a different pocket of the reservoir, or utilize it in some of the other conversion pathways that I have shared. But in the long term, what we're trying to do actually is to develop a subsurface membrane that only allows for production of hydrogen and leaving the CO2 on the ground. And that is going to help us actually reduce another about 18% from the cost of gold hydrogen, bringing it to sub-dollar range. Next slide, please. So we've launched this gold hydrogen earlier this year. We've set this up as a wholly owned subsidiary of Cemvita, and we've attracted other partners, 8090, which is a kind of a decarbonization venture capital firm, invested in gold hydrogen, as well as Chart Industries that are helping us with the transportation, the liquefaction of hydrogen once it comes to surface. And what we're doing now, we are discussing with several different players, some in the US, in Wyoming, in California, along the Gulf Coast, where we do have existing hydrogen pipeline infrastructure, as well as in Asia and in the Middle East and in Europe, developing several field trials that we will start deploying from a few months from now and well into 2023. Our goal is to get to that first commercial deployment to 50 ton a day before the end of next year. Can we go to the next slide? These are some pictures from our field trial in the Permian Basin. What we did there was basically we picked 2 wells, and so this was a single well huff and puff operation where you inject the microbes and the nutrients in one well, and you shut in the well. And then in the other well, we only injected the nutrients as a control for the other well. And then after the 4 days, when we reopen the wells, we take samples on surface to measure the amount of hydrogen production. And then we kind of set up a monitoring schedule from there. So this was a successful test. It showed us that it is possible to replicate what we've seen in the lab in the field setting, and also giving us a bit more data for the techno-economic assessment and the design of the extended field trial, which is the water flood test, which we're doing right now. Next slide, please. And just to add a bit more color, this is kind of a summary of applications that we're discussing right now with different parties around the world. And, I would just say what was really exciting about gold hydrogen was it gives existing infrastructure all the knowledge that has been developed in the oil and gas industry, from geology and petroleum engineering and subsurface modeling and, subsurface microbiology. All of that could be utilized in this new direction, as well as the investment that companies are making in other ways of making hydrogen, such as green hydrogen or blue hydrogen. This is just a different way to reuse existing infrastructure. If the issue with hydrocarbons or fossil fuels is the emissions, we could create ways to continue to use this available feedstock, but design systems that do not create emissions. And so bulk hydrogen could be an example of that. And with the cost advantage, I think it's going to really build the foundation for the hydrogen economy and unlock a lot of new applications while we wait, for the cost of green hydrogen to get to a comparable range, with the other methods. I think this is my last slide. I'm happy to, if there's time, to answer any questions that anyone might have, and happy to also connect separately to share more details. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having joined us, Mr. Karimi นะครับก็เป็นโกไฮโดรเจนนะครับซึ่งก็เป็นคาร์บอนนิวทรัลไฮโดรเจนประเภทหนึ่งนะครับกระบวนการผลิตก็
But it's a carbon neutral. It's a microbiology that under the subsurface, under the soil. So it's a bit complex. So if you have any questions, you can contact him directly because he has given an address for you to contact. So from hydrogen, we are now moving into something we discuss a lot as well about carbon capture utilization, or CCUS. The name is direct. It's the technologies to capture CO2 under the soil. So we are honored by speakers today from carbon capture utilization and storage. And the topic he's going to mention is advancing a lower carbon future with CCUS. So, and this is the technology from Chevron, emphasized a lot.
The next sessions by the Director and Chief Executive Officer of Star Petroleum Refining, Mr. Robert Dobrik. ขอเสียงปรบมือต้อนรับท่านด้วยนะครับ
Well, first off, Swadee Cup. Let me introduce myself. As I said, I'm the CEO of Star Petroleum Refining Company, and I've been in that role for just a little over 1 year. But I've actually been a member of Chevron. I've been an employee of Chevron for over 37 years. And I've had a little experience with some carbon sequestration in Australia, so Kunchaiwat and I discussed perhaps sharing some of my lessons learned and just a bit of the vision of where Chevron is heading. There we go. Hey, first off, I think like many of us have described, there's no denying the future is lower carbon. Chevron believes that really it's kind of like the triangle, slightly different words, but we need to provide reliable, affordable, and ever cleaner energy to meet the needs and power the world forward. The energy demand is not getting any lower. The population is growing, as Kunchaiwat outlined in his opening slide, and we need to look for all the ways possible to provide energy that is affordable, reliable, and ultimately, lower carbon. Chevron has set some objectives similar to, I think, what Kunchaiwat described, is try to look for ways to reduce our carbon intensity. Arguably, if we look at our portfolio across the world, we're already at a first quartile type performer in terms of the actual carbon intensity, but there's still opportunities to do better. And a lot of the focus going forward in terms of that operation is really around some basics around energy efficiency, looking for opportunities to reduce any fugitive emissions, things like methane, and obviously reduce flaring where that opportunity presents itself. Ultimately, the aspiration is to drive towards a net zero for our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2050. But while we're continuing to look for ways to make the existing and really important, fossil fuel industry more efficient, more reliable, lower carbon, we also see the need to position towards a lower carbon future. So looking for ways to grow our lower carbon business. And we really got 4 main areas there. There's renewable fuels and products. So that's really around biofuels, sustainable aviation fuels, feedstocks that ultimately start to displace some of the fossil fuels. Hydrogen. I am not going to get into the various colors. I'll have to come up with another color. But that's pretty interesting presentation. Offsets and emerging technologies. That needs to be a part of the equation as well. And I think we're thinking of things, I think Bangchak has already invested into things like geothermal and other forms of energy. Those have to be part of the equation. And finally, carbon capture and utilization. So that's really what I'm going to focus on a bit today, is really around that topic. As part of that change, Chevron's kind of invested in a dedicated team to really focus around new energy. So it's a new organization that was formed, still in its formative stages, but it's really focusing on the 4 things that I described. It's really looking at where the, if you can think about it, where is the opportunities reside? And I think we see some key U.S. markets, especially West Coast, perhaps Gulf Coast of the U.S. Likewise, Asia. If you think about where is some of the large consumers and where is some of the potential to grow these types of businesses, it's really looking in Asia. So those are some of the early day focus areas for this organization. Ultimately, it's really looking for ways to find ways to collaborate with industry and others and governments to really enable these types of opportunities to advance. So let me talk a little bit about carbon sequestration. I think we all recognize, there's no one solution, as Khun Chaiwat pointed out. It's going to take everything. It's going to take all these various opportunities we have in front of us and ultimately bring them at scale. So I think as we described in terms of the taxonomy and the fiscal regimes that are required, it's going to take everything working together to ultimately create the environment for these to be successful. But carbon sequestration, if we look at trying to drive to where we want to be in 2050, renewables are going to play a key role. But I think by all studies and evaluations, everyone sees carbon sequestration as a critical enabler to kind of drive the change and drive the movement forward. And the technology is more or less available. I think that's the other key is it's already been demonstrated. It still needs to be refined and optimized, and it needs to be brought to scale, but it's not something that hasn't been done, and it's not something that hasn't been done repeatedly in a few different organizations. So I think that's really around the opportunity for us is how do we connect with the sources to the opportunities and ultimately find those environments and create those environments where we have the right fiscal and policy regimes to support things moving forward. So what is I think many of you are already familiar, but what is carbon capture, utilization, and storage? I think we had some examples, perhaps in the previous speaker slide, around how do we utilize, CO2 differently than we've done in the past to kind of, to create different end products. Storage is really around finding reservoirs subsurface. In many cases, these are depleted reservoirs through time and production. But in some instances, they're actually brand new reservoirs that just afford the opportunity to sequester CO2. The difference, that I'd say perhaps from what's been done in the past versus what needs to be done in the future is really scale. We've actually done what I'd characterize as sufficient volume of pilots and even fairly large, type operations, as Gorgon was designed as an example to inject, roughly 4 million tons per annum of CO2. So a fairly material uplift. I was also part of, Chevron was also part of Quest, which is a CO2 sequestration operation in Canada, and that was roughly 1 million tons per annum. So over time, you're seeing some, scales of 1 million, 4 million, but the next generation is really looking for another step change in terms of what these volumes are going to be, and you have to find what I characterize the right characteristics in terms of reservoirs, your source streams, and ultimately the policy enablers to really put these pieces together. But CO2 storage has, CO2 disposal or use has been in use for decades. I think we all talk about, producing from oil and gas. We've used water floods, steam floods, different kind of hydrocarbon floods, and CO2 floods. So, I was involved, one of my operations when I was in MidCon as the general manager of operations was the Rangeley CO2 flood, where we transported CO2, used it as a miscible fluid to actually, to squeeze more oil out of the formation, and ultimately recycled that CO2 as part of that whole cycling exercise. I've been involved in other, what I characterize as very high pressure gas injection systems, generally trying to reduce, to once again cycle back through the reservoir. So the actual technology of, injecting, products into reservoirs at high pressures is not a new phenomena. There's some lessons learned over those years in terms of metallurgy, the level of water removal that needs to be, factored into the design. But the actual capability and technology and metallurgy, those are already pretty much proven. The challenge is how do we take up another notch in terms of efficiency as we continue to move forward. So, really, I think, what we're really looking at is, from Chevron's perspective, we kind of look at this as something that we have capabilities. You know, we have historical capabilities that we've done in terms of these projects. We have some opportunities with some of our assets to actually continue to advance. So we have a select few assets within our portfolio where we can see ourselves advancing CCUS. You know, we really do need to continue to invest in commercializing some technology. You know, some of the CO2 capture mechanisms have been what I characterize as more amine based. And they're functional, they work, but is that the technology that's going to lead to the next scale and the next type of opportunities moving forward? So that's an area that we continue to need to look for and look for, you know, kind of breakthrough technologies. And the critical thing is really around partnerships. Nobody's doing what we need to do by themselves. You know, I think you're already seeing consortiums being established in various parts of the world. And I think, for example, there's some in Canada around the heavy oil developments in the oil sands. In the US Gulf Coast, you're seeing some consortiums being formed. I think you're seeing some activity in Singapore. This is not a single company game. This is I think, as perhaps the World Economic Forum individual kind of alluded to, this is us partnering together in different ways than we've ever done before. You know, I think we've partnered as companies on select projects, but this is partnering with multiple companies, partnering with governments, partnering in a way that we really haven't done before to be successful. But as I hopefully outlined earlier, it's a critical enabler to us to be able to achieve some of the goals we have in front of us. So really, I think, once again, I think what I think Chevron can do is brings decades of experience and a proven track record of actually doing these types of work. We have deep tech, you know, we tried to stay, when we looked at the areas that we're focusing as a company, we're trying to stay focused on the things that we do well. So as an example, Chevron's not getting into, quote unquote, things like solar or wind, not because we can't, but because others actually already do that very well. We're trying to leverage our capabilities and our strengths, and these are some of the areas where we're really getting into things like carbon sequestration and hydrogen is another example, because these are areas that we've been in the business for multiple decades. We understand the technology, and it's an area, how do we then take it up in scale? You know, one of the key challenges we have is how do you really make these connections? So one of the challenges we have is, and we think we bring some strengths to the table, is to partner. You know, as we work in, you know, 60, 70 countries around the world. You know, what has enabled us to be in business for 143 years is to continue to evolve, to continue to build those partnerships in wherever we operate, and that's going to be critical as we continue to move forward. So that's where we just feel like we have to continue to be building on our strengths. And ultimately, you know, how do we make sure that we continue to build those relationships with key governments, key partners in industry, and ultimately with our customers? You know, how do we make sure that we have customers, because I think we have both what I characterize as, you know, company-enabled policy, and we also have, you know, government-enabled policy, and I think both of those are drivers to the next stage. So how do we continue to leverage that full gamut of capabilities to create the environment for future success? So really, you know, once again, I think there's nothing really getting in our way but ourselves. You know, so the challenge for us is how do we get going? There's the technology is essentially there. The opportunities are in front of us. Do we have reservoirs? We do. You know, do we have sources? We do. So how do we create the right environment working together to ultimately drive these capabilities forward? And as I think Kun Chaiwat said, every day behind you is a day that's lost in terms of us making an impact. So I think our challenge is to work more collaboratively as a group and work with governments, not against governments, but, you know, help work to frame some of the taxonomy and some of the enablers that actually facilitates, you know, it gives confidence to investors that if they're investing today, they can have confidence 10 years from now. We still have the same rules and regulations that are going to support, you know, the payouts that some of these projects are going to demand. So I think it's really just enabling all those elements and then bringing in innovation. I think there's, you know, I think we never underestimate what creative people can do when given a challenge. And I think when you, once again, you throw this at, you know, our industry, and you throw this at the, you know, the broad community, I think we can not only do as good whatever we've done in the past, but take it up a notch in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness of this technology moving forward. So I think really it's up to us. It's how do we identify and collaborate for those scale type applications. I think in Thailand here we have some good opportunities and some where we have some very condensed industrial, complexes. So how do we leverage that capability and that advantage to our advantage to try and grow these opportunities here in Thailand? Really, that's all I had. I just wanted to kind of briefly overview, and I just want to echo Khun Chaiwat's premise is that it's going to take all energy types, all efforts, and frankly, working differently than we have in the past for us to be successful. I think some of the things we've done give us some hope for the future, but we have to build new skills and have a growth mindset in terms of how we collaborate and how we leverage each other's capabilities to really drive us to the next level of performance. So with that, thank you, and happy to take any questions or just leave it at that.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Robert Dobrik, who is the Director and Chief Executive Officer of Star Petroleum Refining Company Limited. Thank you very much for that. We have the session's Q&A later on after the end of the last speaker. อย่างที่ท่านได้บอกนะครับว่าท่านก็อยู่
As the speaker, Mr. Dobrik have said that he is a CEO of SPRC for 1 year. However, he had worked with Chevron for 37 years, and Chevron have been working on the CCUS for many decades. However, in order to achieve this net zero goal, okay, it's really a collective and collaborative effort, and we do not underestimate the new technology or new innovation. Okay, for the next session, we will talk about carbon clean. The next topic is called innovating carbon dioxide recovery technology. So we have a startup from the US, which is the startup on the carbon capture. We'll talk about carbon dioxide capture and the feature as using as the tool instead of the tower in order to capture CO2, which will be an huge opportunity for cost saving. And this can be rolled out as a model for carbon capture around the world.
Carbon dioxide recovery technology. This is a pre-recorded multimedia, and I would like everyone to join me in welcoming the co-founder and the CEO of Carbon Clean Solutions Company Limited from the United Kingdom, Mr. Aniruddha Sharma. ขอเสียงปรบมือให้ท่านด้วยนะครับ
Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Aniruddha Sharma. I'm co-founder and CEO of Carbon Clean, a company headquartered in London that's focused on making carbon capture viable at $30 per ton. I'm really glad to be here at the Energy Security and Carbon Sequestration Forum, especially focusing on and talking a bit about innovating carbon dioxide capture technology for heavy industrial emitters. I want to take this opportunity to thank the team from Bangchak Group for inviting me here and allowing me to talk a bit about what exactly are we doing at Carbon Clean that is so different and so revolutionizing for the carbon capture industry. Just getting into a bit more detail. So I think all of us agree that the climate change is a real problem and it's happening at a pace that is much faster than pre-industrial levels. However, industrial decarbonization today has certain specific challenges, and those challenges are quite extreme. I mean, for example, there's no space as far as industrial sites are concerned for capturing carbon dioxide. The cost of capturing carbon dioxide could be too expensive. It could be at least $80, going as high as $150. And then third, which is something that's shown on the graph here on the right hand side, is the pace of the growth that's required to deliver industrial decarbonization. Or 1.5 degrees Celsius demands a 500 times increase in the equipment delivery capacity between now and 2050. And to give you an idea, the whole world working together in the solar industry has been able to deliver 16 times growth between 2010 and 2020. So there is something to be said as far as it's expensive technology, takes a lot of space, and then there is not enough capacity in the market today. Carbon Clean was founded in 2009 with a very simple vision of delivering 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide captured. Today, we have 49 operating sites. Across those 49 sites, we have already captured and delivered 1.7 million tons of CO2 captured. We are quite a technology intensive company, so we have 70 granted patents all over the place. Plus, at the same point of time, we are filing for more patents. The unique selling point of our technology and of our company is our Cyclone CC next generation technology, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That compresses the size of the equipment by 10 times and the footprint by 50%. And that reduces the overall cost extremely significantly. The process for capturing carbon dioxide, I think, standard amine-based process has been around for quite some time. And coming from oil and gas industry, I'm surely you're probably aware of the process already. And the process was initially invented for oil and gas industry and split in two parts. The first part is absorption part, where you absorb the CO2 in the flue gas or any kind of mixture into a chemical in a column called the absorption column. And then the second phase of the process is stripping, where you heat the mixture of CO2 and chemical to about 120 degrees Celsius. And at that temperature, you boil off the CO2, you cool it down, you recover it, and you compress it, and you send it for storage. Chemical solvent is cooled and it's recirculated back into the absorption column. So it's a cyclic process. First step is absorption, second step is desorption, and it has been around for quite some time. But there are quite a few changes. Those are now coming up, especially the new technology that's coming up is extremely significant. For example, first, innovation from our side and from our company that came into the market was to actually bring out a new solvent called APBS CTR Max that can reduce the operating cost of carbon capture, even standard carbon capture plants, very significantly. 20 times less corrosion, 50% less solvent makeup, 30% less energy consumption. So quite a few big benefits. We then clubbed the solvent with three process offerings. One is a traditional carbon capture plant, as you can see on the left side, where you have tall towers, maybe 45 meter tall towers. CO2 is captured at large scale. So this type of technology is a good choice for really large plants. The second offering is what we call a semi-model plant. So 80% inside a box, 20% outside a box. Great combination for industrial processes or for sites who are looking to scale up the technology sort of as they go forward and scale up the implementation. And the third is our next generation technology, Cyclone CC, which is what we're super excited about. This is really where we believe we can reduce the size very significantly. We can standardize the carbon capture process, and we can just replicate the overall equipment from one location to other location very easily. I talked a bit about 49 operating sites. So this map shows you where and how we are operating today. Just next to the island is India. Today we operate 4 CO2 capture plants in India. The two most notable ones are for Tata Steel in the eastern part of India, where we capture CO2 from the blast furnace, and the second one is in southern part of India, where we capture CO2 from a coal boiler to produce a green chemical called soda ash, which is then used by the detergent industry. We have quite a few units operating in Europe today. The biggest one, which we are actually building right now, is for Holcim in Spain, where CO2 will be captured. 700,000 tons of CO2 will be captured. But like I said, what I'm really excited about is Cyclone CC technology. So as you see on this slide, we are compressing the size of the equipment by 10 times. This 1 meter diameter disc does exactly the same job as a 35-meter tall absorption column. Exactly the same job, no difference whatsoever. And as evidence here, this is a much better picture. So on the left-hand side, you can see we have our Cyclone CC technology in the front. In the background, you have a standard carbon capture plant, which is 35 meters tall. And you can see how we've been able to compress the size of the equipment so significantly that it's almost a breakthrough. On the right-hand side is our unit in the US, where we're capturing CO2 at the National Carbon Capture Center. As you can see, it's a back of a truck solution. You can build it once at one place, and if you have to move it, you can move it, or you can just keep building box by box by box by box, and you can build towards industrial decarbonization between now and 2050. On this slide, there is a comparison to a standard carbon capture plant. So in the background, you would see a standard carbon capture unit capturing carbon dioxide from a refinery in Europe. You would have equipment that's about 35 meters tall, or actually even higher than that. And then you would have an extremely high footprint and space requirement within the system. When you contrast that with our Cyclone CC technology, you see that we are reducing the footprint and the area by an order of magnitude and the height so significantly. Then you can start thinking about building multiple of these units on the same site, and then think about how do you want to decarbonize your site in conjunction with other things. There is no such thing as one single solution, one simple bullet. What we tell our customers, or what I tell our customers most of the time, is that they should be thinking about carbon capture as a combination of things. So you have to have carbon capture, maybe some biomass, maybe some hydrogen, maybe electrification. You probably need everything in there to achieve the decarbonization objective. Some of our partners with whom we are rolling out the technology, so with Chevron in the US and San Joaquin Valley capturing CO2 from a cogeneration unit, with Veolia capturing CO2 from a waste incineration plant in the UK, and with Cemex capturing CO2 from a cement plant in Germany, so that it can then, the captured CO2 can then be used for producing aviation fuel. Apart from the technology, we also bring in the expertise of providing the technology as a service. So we believe that our customers need to focus their resources and the people and their skills on their core business, which would be refining, could be steel, could be cement, could be petrochemicals, could be something else. Excuse me. And then we bring the rest of the parts, which is carbon dioxide capture, the technology, the financing, the transport and storage, in partnership with other partners of ours. We have a pretty strong partnership base all over the world. I've talked about a couple of them previously, but what's even more interesting is we are backed by very, very strong investment partners like Chevron, Saudi Aramco, TC Energy, Samsung, Wave Equity Partners, Equinor, Marubeni. So we have really, really strong investment partners and shareholders backing us up. I think the current context of energy security is extremely, extremely challenging, and it's very important given what's going on, at least here in Europe. I think there is a need to balance the requirement for energy security and the requirement for higher production with an ambition for net zero, and carbon capture technology, especially our Cyclone CC technology, can do that quite well. As a company, Carbon Clean is on a mission to deliver 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide captured either with ourselves or with our partners. And I'm quite interested and open for partnerships. Again, I want to thank the Bangchak group for inviting me here to come and talk about Carbon Clean. Like I said, we're bringing out the technology that can compress the size of the equipment by 10 times and hence achieve cost of carbon dioxide capture of $30 per ton. Thank you.
เอาละครับขอเสียงปรบมือนะครับให้กับวิทยากร
Thank you so much. So please give a big round of applause from Mr. Aniruddha Sharma, who is the CEO of Carbon Clean Solutions, talking about innovating carbon clean technology to achieve net zeros. Another speakers is through pre-recorded media as well. We're going to talk about carbon absorption, nature-based absorption. These speakers talk about determination to talk about high-quality nature-based carbon capture. and reflecting her will and Shell, nature-based solution Shell. So this is a pre-recorded video.
Who is the Global Vice President, Nature-Based Solutions, Shell, Miss Flora Ziqing.
Good afternoon, dear members of Bangchak and distinguished guests. My name is Flora Ji. I'm the Global Vice President of Nature-Based Solutions in Shell. Thank you for inviting me to today's event. It's a great honor to have this opportunity to discuss with you more about nature-based solutions and what we do in this regard in Shell. Let's start with the context. Tackling climate change is one of the greatest challenges the world faces today. It took us more than a century to put together the existing energy system. Now we need to use the upcoming 3 decades to shift this towards low to zero carbon emissions energy infrastructure. Moreover, we also see that the world is struggling from biodiversity loss and natural ecosystem damages. The task ahead of us is huge. It requires us all to work closely together, including governments, civil societies, corporates, and customers, to go hand in hand in tackling these challenges. Shell has set a target to become net zero energy business by 2050. This means net zero emissions from our Scope 1 and 2 activities from operations and energy we use, and also Scope 3 activities from the end use of the energy products we sell. Scope 3 emissions occupy more than 85% of Shell's total net carbon footprint. To achieve net zero, we're working on 3 elements in parallel: improving energy efficiency, shifting energy mix to low carbon energy such as hydrogen, EV charging, renewable power generated from solar and wind, and also capture and store remaining emissions through technology such as CCUS and balancing them through nature-based solutions. In this context, Shell estimates to retire 120 million ton nature-based carbon credits per annum to offset the Scope 3 hard-to-abate emissions by 2030. And this will be done in line with the mitigation hierarchy of avoiding emissions, reducing emissions, and then compensating the hard-to-abate emissions. So, what is nature-based solutions? Nature-based solutions are activities that protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural ecosystems ranging from forest, agriculture, grassland, wetland, and coastal ecosystems. These activities aim for holistic ecosystem service approach to create natural carbon sinks that help address climate change and natural disaster issues, tackle societal challenges effectively and adaptively, and simultaneously benefiting people and nature. NBS activities can help increase carbon storage or avoid greenhouse gas emissions in the natural ecosystems. Such carbon benefits can be quantified, measured, and verified as carbon credits, which can be traded in the carbon marketplaces. Shell's global environmental products trading business has been working on carbon credits trading and marketing activities in compliance and voluntary market for a decade. Shell is also one of the first private sector companies who made significant commitment to directly invest into nature-based solutions. Since NBS inception in 2018, Shell NBS have been working closely with the carbon developers, local communities, governments, NGOs, and other experts on MBS projects to make a difference. Let's zoom into Asia. We're active in MBS activities across Asian continent. In China, our joint venture Climate Bridge is a leading carbon developer in country. We're working on more than a dozen of reforestation, afforestation, and grassland restoration projects. In Philippines, we're working with universities and local communities to restore more than 10,000 hectares deforested land. In India, we set up a joint venture together with EKI, the largest carbon developer in country, to dedicate efforts on MBS project development. And also in Australia, through our wholly owned subsidiary, Select Carbon, we're managing more than 60 carbon farming projects across 9 million hectares, supporting the local farmers to have additional carbon revenue stream. We're also exploring very actively investment opportunities into MBS in Thailand. So, why it is important to work on nature-based solutions and how to successfully deploy nature-based solutions. Scientific studies reveal that nature can contribute more than 30% of the requirements towards Paris Agreement by 2030 in an affordable and scalable way. Let alone all of these significant benefits nature-based solutions can actually generate from both societal and environmental perspectives. To unleash nature's potential to tackle climate change, quality is of paramount importance. 1 ton carbon credits generated from nature-based solution projects have to represent 1 ton carbon dioxide either removed or reduced from the atmosphere. Monitoring, reporting, and verification technologies are important to improve the high quality, high standard of integrity. On the other hand, it is also important to ensure the responsible use of carbon credits generated from nature-based solutions projects, and make sure such usage are in line with the mitigation hierarchy rather than being a tool to justify business as usual activities. Robust environmental and social safeguards are essential to deliver net positive impacts to nature and people. Local communities' involvement is vital to the success of MBS projects. There needs to be inclusive, regular, and culturally appropriate engagements so that communities can participate in project design and implementation. Very often, nature-based solutions projects will run across several decades, so this will require significant commitment and involvement to make sure the successful delivery. Regulatory and policy clarity would be definitely needed to enable more MBS investment and to really bring this to scale. It is encouraging to see that more entrants are coming to MBS space over the past 2 years. MBS and global carbon market is a very fast-moving space. All participants should work to promote quality and build societal confidence in MBS as a viable additional lever to help us achieve Paris Agreement. It would be great to see more companies to embed nature into their investment philosophy and embed this into their own decision-making approaches. We at Shell MBS, look forward to further exchanging our views with you and go for more collaboration together to bring MBS into higher impact. Thank you all.
ขอเสียงปรบมือนะครับให้กับวิทยากรของเราช่วงนี้นะครับ
Thank you very much. May I get a big applause for Ms. Flora Ching, Global Vice President, Nature-Based Solutions Chair, as we are really talking about reforestation and other projects that are implementing in the Asia continents, either China, Australia, India, and Philippines. And now, so this is that for the nature-based solution is something that we can start doing right away. And some example of what Bangchak Group have done so far is the to increase green area around the refineries, to the reforestation project, okay, to support community project with Maphalung Foundation, and to utilize the sea glass as the carbon capture, okay, and minimize GHG project, and as well as many other projects. Now we have listened to 5 speakers, and as well as Kun Chaiwat and Dr. Parameti, so altogether 7 speakers. Now I believe that the participants, both the on-site or the online participants through many social medias, would have questions to the speakers. Now we have collect some questions already now, but however, if you have more questions, okay, to the speakers, so you are welcome to submit your question through our platform. For the speakers who are not here with us today, okay, we will submit your question to those speakers and get the answer later. Now we have around 20 minutes
from the audience, both here physically in the room and also for those who is watching us via the Zoom webinar and the social media platforms as well. We still have got another 20 minutes for this. มีคำถามไหมครับ แสดงว่าเคลียร์มาก
No questions, so means that any questions, or maybe you're still absorbing, but however, we've got some questions online and sent into English. Okay, let me read through it. I believe this is to Dr. Parameti.
Sustainable financial taxonomy of Thailand will delay adaptation, inclusion, because the current speaker, I mean ก็คือท่านประธานบอร์ดของแบงก์ชาตินะฮะ focuses on CC mitigation. Is such taxonomy or terminologies incorporated in the draft of Climate Change Act? I know that the act is in the drafting process, which I don't understand why it is taken almost 30 years after our ratification of the UNFCCC. Whereabout is the draft of CC Act นะครับก็เดี๋ยวท่านปรเมธีแล้วกันนะครับเชิญเลยครับท่านครับครับก็เดี๋ยวฝากทีมงานแปลภาษาอังกฤษ
So the question is rather long. Now let me answer the part that I can answer. But thank you very much. It's very good questions. Thank you for your concern on the Thailand taxonomy that will focus on the climate mitigation first, which may cause most of the investment will be allocated to because the investment that needed to the climate mitigation would be huge, while most of the investment may be allocated to the climate adaptation, which have the wide impact to the vulnerable groups of people. And so this is a very good question. So to address these questions, actually for Thailand taxonomy, in the end, our end goal will be a comprehensive one. Now we have set 5 objectives in total. We start first with mitigation, next to adaptation, and then we protect the preserve the biodiversity and environment. We will work on the building on the security and resource resilience, and to the pollution prevention. And then the very last one, that's our end goal, to cover all these areas. However, at this very beginning step, we will start with climate mitigation first, since it has high impact and will help drive this policy for implementation faster. And as I said earlier, that we will start with the two largest contributors to the GHG emission, which is energy and transportation, and we will roll out to agriculture and industrial sectors in the next phase. So to say that we do not overlook the point that is your concern. However, we are doing this in phasing, and this is just similar to the EU. When they start, we have start with one thing first, and then scale up to other areas, and so we will have more robust criteria on the other areas. So as we implement this taxonomy in times, and it also include the other business that might not be the big contributor to the emission, but also the enabler business that will help us to achieve the business. We will also include those business into the taxonomy plan. Now, the question is about whether it will be included in the environmental law or not. Now, as far as in the draft, it's not included yet. However, there's some clause that talking about data collection about the GHG emission, to build the national database in this issue, which will be used for make any or develop or formulate any formula or decision in this issue in the future. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you very much, Dr. Parameti, for addressing these questions.
The English translation version of the answers will be provided to you a little bit later on by the team. คำถามมีเพิ่มเติมไหมครับเคลียร์มากเยี่ยมมาก
Great. Okay, there's one. Can you give him the mic? Behind the back, and then one in the front. So thank you, speakers. I listened to the talks, and I see the quite clear directions on carbon capture and sequestration. But what I would like to ask about the policies that in bringing the technology to practicality in terms of reducing, in terms of lowering carbon or going into net zeros. I think the important factor is the funding and investment, because the project, I think they are during the phase of trial. So for in terms of tax, I think tax it's an important driver. I'd like to ask the president. So for the policy of financial institutions or BOT, has to come from a basic understanding and aims more at the practice, because I work on the petroleum research, and it actually connects with the project into the project of capturing and storage of carbon dioxide. But in the industry, I think there's a challenge to work with financial institutions or financial markets or even the investment market who thinks of this as a risky business, and the incentive from financial institutions to promote this, in my personal opinion, is quite low. I think there's more to encourage financial institutions to encourage their investment on this. So besides taxation, do you think there's any encouragement for financial institutions that could help? So Dr. Parameti, please. Thank you. So as I said, in the sustainability framework of financial institution, there are many aspects, and one of them is to build incentives. I think that first, so we need to begin with taxonomy first, and that would be the principle for us to share understanding. And it will not be mandatory at first, and after that we will promote for people in the society to understand it's something that they need to support. So I think this would allow more channels to get to financial institutions. And so the company should be able to get cheaper, should get more incentive or should get more investment. So I think in the next step for the incentive, or if we look at examples from other countries, some examples are still controversial. For example, like giving credits from financial institutions, or we give different weight between activities that we like to promote, or the activities that are risky to environment. So there's like incentive and punishment. There are examples from other countries that may come from the government or central bank that buy stocks or bonds that aligns with the taxonomy. So that is the next phase and the next step that BOT would try to find the appropriate solutions. It's still within the framework of what we're trying to see, the more financial investment pouring in the business that aligns with taxonomy. So that's the answer from Dr. Parameti Kuningtongtip. So she has a remark. So I don't have a question, but it's a comment. I feel that since from Kun Chaiwat statement, the form of energy that we're going to use, it has to be a balance of many sources of energies. But lately, I feel that Thailand is quite leaning towards wind, solar, and EV. So I'm quite pleased with Chaiwat's statements that calculates that it's impossible to like going in the only renewable energy that is the only solution. It's almost like a fashion about to talk about EV. But I think it's a clear analysis I have not calculated the way that Kun Chaiwat has done, the trillion extra joules that Kun Chaiwat has calculated.
นะคะแต่ที่เรียนอยากจะเน้นก็คือว่าโดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่ง Southeast
But I want to emphasize is the Southeast Asia and Thailand. We are basically agricultural land. We have water, we have lands. But we have like more floods. We have lights, we have airs, we have quite enormous lands that we can add value to. So we don't have to, we cannot forget biofuel or bioenergy or bio-based technology that is suitable for our lands. So I feel that Thailand is quite likes the fashion, likes to follow the trend on renewable energy, and we agricultural, right? We cannot go anything beyond agricultural in the next 20 years. So we had to be based on agricultural base. So for example, like biofuel is something that we have to consider. Even though biofuel produce carbon dioxide, but it's less than fossil fuel by 60%. So but Bangchak has been one of the big player with biofuels. So here is my comment. There needs to be a balance, as it's impossible to go only for EV. And we are agricultural-based country. So whatever the policies going, so we have BBCG. So basically this green economy, we are talking about green economy without bio. So I think this is wrong. And I think there's many flaws to this. I would like to pull people back to not lost in the EV trend. And we can be a great producer of biofuel, and we need biotechnologies. This could reduce the cost. Do not afraid of GMO. Even of the vaccine you injected is GMO, so do not afraid of that. And we are grow people, so don't forget. Thank you. Please give a big round of applause for Kun Ying.
ฐานของเราสิ่งดีๆเรา
So don't forget our root, whether it's the water and biodiversity. Now, in this very last time, I would like to invite the Group CEO and President of Bangchak Corporation PLC, Mr. Chaiwat Kowawisarat, to give a closing remark. First of all, thank you very much, okay, Kun Ying Thong Tip, okay, for giving your remarks, and also for all participants who joined this event. Now we have set the scene right from the beginning that we need energy must be a mix. Energy mixes. We cannot rely on any particular source of energy. And when we're talking about taxonomy, it's something that will ease the transition of the energy. And next, it will be the mandatory for the banks to provide green finance. Okay, considering the capital ratio or whatever. We have 2 startups, okay, speakers, okay, and right now we also have a super major corporate like Chevron and Shell who join us. Therefore, what the key message here is that this transition is not something that we can do alone. And in the end, it must be a collaborative and collective effort from everyone. Now, finally, I agree with you about the bio, and we Bangchak will also have the bio spearhead of the BBGI. We had a forum 2 years ago, and next year we will also talk about bio topic. Okay, next year for another, so we can see. Wait for that. Look forward to that topic in another 12 months. Now, it comes back to the title of this today's conference: Energy Security and Carbon Sequestration. This is I like you to think that if we promote green business through taxonomy, then there's no green economy. And in the end, it will become black out or brown out. I think that everyone has to go in parallel. It's like you buy a car and you need the airbag, you need a safety belt. You ask people to invest in fossil fuel, and then that investment must include carbon sequestration, and that's the how we ensure sustainability. This is the key message that I would like to deliver to you, that if you are going to invest in carbon fossils, and what are the mitigation, and as I said, that we still need to depend on fuel fossils for another 30 years. Thank you very much, Mr. Chewat Kuba Visarat. Okay, and that's what we have today. We have used lesser time than we thought. Okay, so we can actually decrease the use of electricity by 15 minutes. And however, I would like to reiterate that it's a trilemma, not only dilemma, that everything have to work in parallel, and the only question is how can we work together in parallel during this transition period. Now, lastly, we have the QR code, okay, to ask you to fill up for the feedback of this conference, and your feedback will be incorporated to improve the conference in the next times. And if you are interested to receive the presentation, please contact our staff, okay, and we will send the soft file to you. And those who listening through Zoom, you can submit your question, and we will address your questions online later. Now, on behalf of Bangchak, okay, and all the speakers, okay, I would like to thank all participants and see you at the next conference, which is the 13th conference, and lunch is provided at Bangchak room. Okay, thank you very much for today, and see you on the next opportunity. Thank you.